Okay, let's see. We should be live streaming now. Okay, so I think we're going to be live streaming in just a moment, and we will start the sales chat. All right, here we are live on yeah, we're live streaming now. So again, for those of you who missed, I just want to welcome Roderick Jefferson, who is a sales consultant, has been named as one of the top sales enablements by Selling Power. He has consulted with many companies, Fortune 500 companies, etc. Is now with a unicorn, a cybersecurity startup. And Roderick is up in the Bay Area. So welcome, Roderick. And my colleague, Martha, who is in Vienna, who's going to do the Twitter chat. That's hashtag sales chats. I was going to say saleschats.com. Just hashtag sales chats.
Please join
on Twitter. Yeah, please join in the conversation. We love to have you. My name is John Golden. So our topic today is the art and science of selling through turbulent times, which obviously we're all familiar with. So, all right, without any further ado, let's get going and let's talk about our first question. Selling the old way, Roderick. Why is selling the old way not applicable anymore?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons, but what I'd like to do actually is kind of set the table of how we got here. And I look at it in a process I call the 5 Ps of sales optimization. That first P was when COVID initially hit. There was a pause. The initial shock and change kind of dominated and consumed all of our thoughts and motives and actions. We'd never seen anything like this before. Well, that pause quickly turned into the next P, which is panic. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt kicked in. We started hearing about the numbers of folks that were getting sick in this mystery illness. And then we started hearing about numbers of folks that were unfortunately dying and passing away. That next P that we move towards is planning. And that's where goals and deliverables and metrics. We had to go and reassess everything. Look at our ideal customer profile. Does that fit today? Look at our ideal employee profile, especially when it comes to sellers. Do we have need the same type of sellers now that we needed previous to COVID, right? Or do we need to up level or change our messaging and positioning? What's going on in the competitive landscape? And of course, all of the mergers and acquisitions that fell in. And then there's the next P, which I think we're in right now, and that is progress, excitement, optimism, advancement. I'm seeing job boards just light up right now as far as companies hiring and growth and maturation happening. And then that next P, I believe, probably is a year away. And again, that depends upon COVID and how things go. But as I look at it, probably a good year away. And that is prosperity, where success and expansion and growth will dominate and will move forward to what I call the next normal. I don't believe there's going to be a new normal, because the new normal infers that it's something we can lean upon that we've seen in the past. And I just don't see us going backwards, but yet we will create a next normal.
Yeah. Or I liked it. Somebody had recently said the never normal, because nothing's ever really that normal.
This is true.
Yeah.
Normal is relative.
Yeah. But I do agree with you. And I think one of the other pieces, Roderick, is just the engagement level, the connectivity of people to people, the authenticity, all of those things, I think have now been re-underlined. Once upon a time, they used to be, very critical pieces of the sales process, and maybe they've been lost a little bit over the years, but now I think people are coming back to craving that level of connection and authenticity. What's your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. I've got two trains of thoughts. One, I believe that social media, while it's wonderful, has made all of us less social. It has helped to add to the disconnection. And I also believe that there's never been a time in the history of the world where selling has been as personalized as it is right now. I mean, we're inviting each other into our homes. When you really think about it, right now, there's never been a time where selling and leading with humanity, empathy, and EQ has meant more than it does today.
Yeah, no, it's a great point that you just made. I mean, there you go. Yeah, we have been literally inviting people into our homes, exposing our lives in ways that perhaps we wouldn't have before. We've met pets, children, significant others, sometimes during these calls. And I think it has made us more aware, I think, and also it has given a greater level of connectedness. And I totally agree with you, Roderick. I think the social media and the technology and all of that has made us more removed, if you like. And now is the time to use technology to actually really connect us.
Absolutely agree. It's time to reconnect. And as oxymoronic as it sounds, I think, as I said, social media has made us less social, but it's also forced us to connect in a very different way than we ever did before. And a reason is social media has opened up opportunities and access to sellers, decision makers, et cetera. That was never there before. I mean, you're literally 3, maybe 4 clicks, depending upon the size of your network, away from being able to touch just about anyone. That wasn't the case when I was a seller. Now, we had to go and get through the gatekeepers and figure out how to get around things. Now it's social selling at its best. It's, you know what, I look in my network and I say, you're connected to so-and-so, would you be open to a warm intro? And we all know that a warm intro is going to carry an enormous amount of weight versus cold calls or cold emails that we get all the time. So it's given us an opportunity to say, how do I connect differently? But another thing I think it's done, John, is it's forced us to really reassess the buyer's journey. Yeah. And what I'm saying is, I was watching a trend where companies were trying to shoehorn their customers into their sales stages, their sales process. Let's call it their selling motions. Well, now it's forced us to step back and say, what's the buyer's journey look like? Why are they buying? Are there buying committees? How is this happening? What's the process? And what's the driver for the buyer versus the seller in these situations?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Roderick. And I think that's a great point, is because we don't spend enough time, I think, on the buyer journey and realizing, and I think sometimes it's because, yeah, we know the buyer behavior changes and all that, and it evolves, but we don't spend enough time analyzing it. We make a lot of assumptions, and sometimes we make assumptions based on outdated information.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's that word that I'm trying to kill, is assumptions. And it leads to my next point. I don't think that in the history of man, there has been the kind of access to information that we have today. And I say information because some of it's good content, some of it's data. I'll just wrap it in the bundle of information. So think about this from the buyer's perspective. They're 70+% down the road before they even reach out to someone. And I saw a report the other day that said 30% of buyers would never even talk to a salesperson if they didn't have to. Which means if they're going to spend time with you, you better have some information that is pertinent. You better share something with them that they could not have just simply Googled or found information somewhere else. And here's the other piece. There has to be a personal component to this. We've all been taught in discovery and qualification, you find out what their pain is, or you find the compelling event, or you highlight that pain, right? Then you find the solution. Sometimes it's Vicodin, sometimes it's Valium, Percocet, sometimes it's an extraction. But what we also have to do differently today, even more, is find out what's in it for that individual. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what will you partnering with my company mean for you personally? That's the game-changing question right there, right? Will it get you a bigger seat at the table? Will it get you a promotion? Will it get you more visibility? Or will it get you out of the doghouse? But you have to understand what's in it for that person, because the old adage of people buy from people has never changed. And it's not going to change. I don't care what we do from an AI, ML perspective, there will always be a need for some form of human touch. And so if we're going to do it, let's make sure that there's a personal component to it as well. And I'd love for us to get away from selling. I know we're all in sales in some sort, but what if we could step back and say, how can we help you? If you're going to sell something, don't sell products, don't sell solutions, don't even sell platforms. Sell the experience that a customer or a prospect can only get by partnering with your company. That's what you should be selling.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Roderick. I think that we're living in an era of highly commoditized products and services, or at least perception-wise they are. I mean, let's face it, a lot of buyers see products and services, they're all the same. It's just preference about what
it's just blue and light blue.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the few ways left to you to differentiate is actually that whole customer experience, and not just the customer experience post-sale, but the pre-sales and post-sales. So the whole experience. And to your point, if you are going to engage with the salesperson, then you're engaging with them for a reason, as you said, because you think they can help you. So if you can't project or show somebody how you can help them, then yeah, they're not going to bother talking to you.
Yeah, you just hit a hot button, and that is both sales and post-sales. Unfortunately, too many times we sell things and we create this big, beautiful home for the prospect. But what we also do, because there's the mishap or the non-existent handoff to the post-sales CSM in times, and again, I'm generalizing here, we're creating this big, beautiful house, but we're also creating a short hallway that they're going to trip out of the back door. Then on the back end, too many times I've seen where we bring these customers in, we get them through the implementation phase, we forget about them. Oh, until 90 days before it's time to renew. And suddenly I'm your best friend. Well, where have you been this entire life of my contract? Where are you in regards to showing me new innovation? What's happening different in the world? Sending me information about what's happening in the space, or even a parallel space that could be relevant or pertinent to me. Instead, when it's time for upsell, cross-sell, or renewal, now I'm your best friend. So what do I feel like? I'm a contract value. I'm not valued by you and your company.
Yeah, and I think that's such a critical piece. I mean, it's like, showing them this beautiful facade of a house, and then you walk through the door and it's like one of those old Western movie sets, right? You know,
it's a prop.
Yeah, it's a prop. I know, and we've all had, and the thing about it is Roderick, because we've all had these experiences, and they stick with us. You know, that experience of a fantastic salesperson who you loved, who was great and everything, and then once you signed on the dotted line, you couldn't get a hold of them, or they were like, oh yeah, Roderick, let me just transfer you over to customer support or whatever, but without any sense on your side that they really cared. And I think there's
no human touch.
Yeah.
Right. I just finished. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes, the empathy.
No, I was going to say no empathy.
Absolutely. And I just finished up, actually not just finished up, I have a book out now that I'm honored to say has become a bestseller, Sales Enablement 3.0. And in there, I actually talk about, there's a chapter dedicated to the importance of the handoff to post-sales, because that's where you're either going to keep or lose a customer. They love you. They said yes, right? It's like the whole dating to marriage thing. They said yes, they want to date. But in order to get to the marriage piece, you got to kick the tires. You got to move in together, if you will, and figure out, does this person snore? Do they leave their socks on the floor? Well, that's the whole back end piece, proverbially, right? What's your culture really about? And I believe culture is what happens when no one is watching. And that's the kind of things what happen with the CSMs. Either you're going to get them to fall madly in love with you and want to marry you, or I think it's probably time we're going to separate. And they're not going to say, oh, it's me, not you. They're going to point blank say, you lost this. I didn't walk away. You pushed me away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, absolutely, Roderick, and I think that's the key point, is that it's that we own this process, right? And it's dictated by the customer, but how we react to it is down to us. And the thing about customer experience is, and oftentimes people miss this point, it's the totality of the experience. So if there's one link in the chain that's weak, well, then the chain breaks.
And it breaks permanently sometimes, right? And you just hit another really good point, and that is we own this experience. Another thing that's changed in these turbulent selling times is companies no longer own their brands. They do not. The customer owns the brand now, right? So there was a time where we could push marketing out, and we could make us be, we being the proverbial company, could push things out and say, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. These are our values. These are our morals. Contraire, those days are gone. Now, your brand can change overnight. Bad experience, what happens? People go to Twitter, people go to Insta, people go to Facebook, people go to LinkedIn, to social media, and they have no problem putting out when there's an issue. I had this issue the other day with a airline, excuse me, not an airline, but a hotel chain that I've been with for over 30 years. And the last 2 times I've gone, absolutely terrible experience. What did I do? I put it out on Twitter. I don't know what's gone on with the level of customer service at XYZ brand, but after 30 years, I'm ready to walk away. And I called out a couple of other of their competitors said, anybody want to take a 30-year vet? Oh, please believe within 10 minutes, I had a DM from that hotel chain that reached out immediately and said, wait, what's happened? What's gone on? Can you give us feedback? And my answer was, go look in the notes. It's all there. All of the problems. And they took some time. And in about a half an hour, they came back to me. I gave them my number. We had a conversation. That could have happened before, not with a chain as large as that. I would have just been one face that said, oh, I'm just going to walk away. But as a social media influencer, I'm not just saying this for me. I'm saying this, and I'm going to say it to all 25,000+ of my followers and connections. That is a significant difference in how we sell now. And they showed from their side that it mattered.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic example, Roderick. As you say, I mean, once upon a time, yeah, they probably could have afforded to ignore you. And if you walked away and joined a different hotel chains program, you would have told your circle of friends or whatever, but it wouldn't have probably had the same impact. So there's a lot of power in the hands of consumers and customers today. So you really have to take out. So in many ways, as an organization, like sellers, post-sales people, whatever, always have to keep in mind how they are representing the brand. And even if you're, you've got to react quickly, you've got to react in the right way. But you've got to keep it consistent because as I said before, as humans, Roderick, as humans, we're hardwired this way. I mean, yes. I always use the I always use the airline example. You can turn up to the airport, check-in is great, get your bags on, no problem. Flight takes off on time, arrives on time, everything's fantastic, but your bags are delayed 15 minutes.
It just became a horrible experience.
It just became a horrible experience, and that's what we tell people. How was your trip? Oh, it was awful.
Because they remember that last piece, right? And that is, I'll equate that to customer experience. They remembered the last piece, no matter how good everything else leading up to that was. If that last piece was horrible, guess what they're going to tell their colleagues, and they're going to tell people that ask, right? And I have a mentor, and a great statement that they used to say about credibility: it takes a lifetime to gain, a moment to lose, and you may never get it back.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people really need to be aware of now. One small slip up in the customer experience can ruin all the hard work. Yeah, there's no such thing anymore as, well, we have all this goodwill in the bank because we did all this other stuff for you. I mean, that's not how people think now.
We're a microwave world. What have you done for me lately? Yeah. that's where everyone is, right? And to that point, right, I think that's, to go back to the original question around the changes. I would say that and this is to sales leaders, virtual leadership is the next normal, right? We've got to figure out how to help our sellers build rapport in a different way, which means there's a higher need for structure and cadence, i.e., we've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because building rapport online is not like it was before. You can't go out and play golf. You can't go have cocktails. You can't go meet with folks, generally speaking. So how do you build that rapport differently, right? And I think a part of that is helping the sellers also to build a virtual community, whether it's cohorts or it's legacy sellers that are taking on mentoring roles with the newbies. But you've got to have an exchange of best practices and those war stories differently now. At the same time, look, all of us are on 8, 9, 10 Zoom meetings a day. Zoom has become a verb, but Zoom has also created Zoom fatigue. So what I'm starting to do is just simply pick up the phone. I know it sounds crazy and old school, but I'll pick up the phone and call people, or I'll put a meeting in and I'll put a phone number. And it's amazing how people come back and go, hey, there's no Zoom link here. We're actually going to have a conversation. Trust me, it's going to be okay. And then finally, and the ultimate piece is, even with this virtual selling, our sales leaders have to model, they have to own and adopt and model what it's like to be able to do this virtually, because the level of customer support and customer service cannot dip. They don't care that it's virtual versus you're sitting across a desk from me. They still have the same problems that they had before, and they're still expecting a stellar level of customer service and customer support.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I totally agree with you on the virtual as well. And I think And to be honest, Roderick, I think if you embrace it, you can build rapport and relationships quite easily, through Zoom and through virtual, through phone call or whatever, if you embrace it. And I think that's probably part of the issue that we've had, is that initially when the pandemic hit and a lot of people had to go virtual for the first time, there's a certain resistance to it. Even experienced salespeople didn't like turning on cameras, for Zoom meetings, but they're happy walking into a room full of strangers and being the center of attention. So there's a lot of kind of these things that people have to get over and embrace it, because it's not going away. But in many ways, it's a more intimate exchange, and you have to be prepared. I mean, you can't really wing it if you're doing virtual meetings.
No, people know when things are genuine. I'll double tap on what you just said. When the pandemic first hit, we all got those, or even sent those emails, hey, hope everything is well with you and your family. I know this is a difficult time. At some point, it began to feel disingenuous.
Yeah.
Right. And as a sales ploy. So I actually, when I was consulting, I would ask my clients, how are you holding up today? Today, let's not talk about what's happened around. How are you doing today? Because this is where we are in this moment. And I think that moment of genuineness and humanity opened up a number of sales opportunities, because it wasn't, hey, this and this. And I got 27 of those same emails this week. Who's selling that template out there? Right. And we all know when people are trying to sell us something, it's the same reason that we no longer want to go onto a car lot, because you're going to be sold to, right? It's the reason that we've got Netflix now instead of Blockbusters and all the things that have gone. It's because we want that choice of being able to buy in a way that fits for us. And we do want to have a relationship with sales folks. I don't think that sales is a bad profession or even has a bad face. It has a bad name somewhat now, but not a bad face. And I want to be part of the wave that's helping to bring this back to where sales is an honorable profession, because what we're doing is actually helping people, because no one buys products. No one buys solutions. If I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy an answer to my problems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's where the people who win are the people who do exactly what you were talking about there, and they show some authenticity and genuineness. But you have to be genuinely interested. I mean, and I think you also need to have the intellectual curiosity to really want to understand their business, really want to understand their business needs. And getting back to your point earlier, really wanting to help. I think if you put that right at the forefront, that you really want to help, that'll come across. Yeah, if you're being trite and just using the example you used, I think is a perfect one. Yeah, we all got sick of all those COVID emails. Yes. Because we knew. But to your point, I mean, if people, the other point I would just want to underline from you there, Roderick, is that, I mean, people do genuinely want help, and they want somebody to help them and guide them. So they want the salesperson. They're just a little bit suspicious. So the moment you put them at ease and show that you really care and that you can, and that you're there to help them, they will absolutely embrace you.
Well, I think that's why that question I brought up earlier of, so Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, what will this mean for you personally, is a game changer. Because I'm not just talking about the broad business. I'm not talking about how are we going to make you more revenue, or how we're going to expand your market share or your competitive positioning. It's literally to that individual. What can we do to help you? And talk about gaining a champion, right? There is not a better way than to show people that you genuinely care about them in the whole buying situation, to get someone on your team. And I'm not saying as a ploy, but I mean genuinely talking to them about what's important. Because let's go back to the process of discovery and qualification. It's kind of shifted over the last decade or so. But if we go back to the true purpose of discovery and qualification, it's literally to ask more questions than to give answers. Yeah, it's about listening. It's not about trying to ask questions that's going to move the sale forward so I can get something on the board. Sure, that's the ultimate goal. But that's not the point of Disco and Qual. It's really to get a deep understanding of what's going on, where you are in your maturation cycle as a company, and whether or not this is a fit. And to that point, we all know there's a time to qual in, equally as important, if not more important, there's a time to qual out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you raised that issue too about the buyer and what's riding on the individuals, whether it's a buying committee or not. Each individual has something personally riding on this decision. As we know in B2B sales, I mean, in B2B purchasing, it can be career enhancing or career limiting, depending if you
Absolutely.
make the right or wrong. And it's stressful for the person who is making, or the people who are making that decision. And I think sometimes we're so anxious to get to say we overlook that piece, because we're like going, oh yeah, but it'll solve all these problems for your business, to your point. And you're going, and we're not reassuring that person that we're going to be there for them afterwards, because probably they've been left at the altar a couple of times.
Oh, I'm certain, right? It's a fluid world of sales. So how many people have talked to them, right? At some point, and I get a lot of cold calls and emails myself in my position. At some point, I'll talk to someone and then I'll get moved on to a next person, and there's the next person. And it feels like, let's say we've called in somewhere and they say, okay, so Mr. Jefferson, we've got your information here. I'm going to transfer you to so-and-so. So-and-so asks you the very same question. Like, you got the same screen they had. And then they pass you on to level 2 support. And guess what happens? So can you please give me your account number and your PIN number and all that over again? We do that in sales and don't even realize we do it, just because things are changing so frequently and so fluid. But it's frustrating to the buyer.
Yeah, no, it's totally frustrating to the buyer. And again, all it does is communicate the fact that you have no idea of the experience that they're having, and you don't care.
You've done no homework, right? If you just put a little more hygiene in your pre-prep process for the meeting, you would not be asking these unnecessary questions. And I think that you can get to your ultimate goal of moving the sales forward much quicker by coming in and saying, hey, you know what? I see that this, and this has happened. You've talked to these individuals. You've talked about these subjects. This is something that came back as interest. Is this still of high interest now, or was this previous? And if so, can we dive into that a little bit? Help me understand.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think these are relatively simple things. I mean, I don't always, I'm not equating simple with easy, but these are simple.
Oh no,
concepts.
It's not easy. It's a lot of things, John. We both know it's not easy, or everybody would be doing it.
Exactly, and but it's not. But if you put your mind to it, these are pretty simple concepts. You just have to deliver them on a consistent basis, which is where the difficulty comes in. Listen, Roderick, this has been fantastic. The time has flown by as usual. Martha, how is the Twitter chat doing?
Oh, it was very nice. So I liked one statement very much, because it says what we are talking about the social media stuff. So on the one hand, social media is a fascinating window into the minds of your customer, but on the other hand, it's also very dangerous. So
absolutely, it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely, correct.
Yeah, it really is. Well, listen, thanks again, Roderick. Before we go, please do tell people a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So sales guy, first and foremost. I hope that came across in the conversation. I've been in sales enablement for sales training for about 25 years now. I'm actually the person that coined the phrase sales enablement, oddly enough, globally. Have a best-selling book out, as I said earlier, Sales Enablement 3.0. If you'd like to know more information, you can find me on LinkedIn at Roderick Jefferson. I'm on Instagram at Roderick_J_associate, or you can find me on Twitter at The Voice of Rod.
Fantastic. I would seriously encourage you to check it out. As Roderick said, has a long track record in sales enablement, and even coined the phrase. You should have trademarked it then and go back and charge everybody.
I wish I was smart enough at that time. Believe me.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Martha in Vienna, for running the Twitter chat. Thank you all for tuning in. And for those who watch this later, there's a lot of fantastic information that you've just been able to extract from this sales chat. So my name is John Golden. Thanks again to Roderick Jefferson. Thanks to Martha Neumeister in Vienna. And we will see you all again